Goalkeepers are incredibly important. When it is eventually concluded, James Trafford's move from Manchester City to Leeds United for more than £40 million will make him the most expensive player in his new club's history. Leeds will then become the only team in the Premier League whose transfer record will be held by a goalkeeper. It's a strange statistic, because success at the highest level of the game seems to depend on high-quality goalkeeping. Arsenal are the Premier League champions, and few would argue that David Raya is not among the best in the world.
Fruit flies taking over your kitchen? This discreet plug-in trap uses light to attract flying insects, then captures them on a replaceable adhesive cartridge, without noisy zapping or messy sprays. Want to get the best verified deal and see full details? Visit grabdeal.us/one right now.
Spain were recently crowned World Cup winners, and Unai Simon deserves similar billing. Paris Saint-Germain won last season's Champions League with Matvei Safonov, a good rather than spectacular goalkeeper, but the point stands. Advertisement, and yet that importance is not reflected in what clubs have traditionally been willing to spend on the position. The most expensive goalkeeper in history is still Kepa Arrizabalaga, who cost €80 million, £72 $93 million, when Chelsea paid the release clause to prize him from Athletic Club in 2018. The £67 that took Alisson from Roma to Liverpool in the same summer is second on that list. In 2001, Juventus signed Gianluigi Buffon from Parma, paying a goalkeeper record £32.06. It was a staggering amount of money, but technically, since we are ignoring inflation, Trafford is about to become only the fourth goalkeeper in history to cost more than £40. Andre Onana, who cost Manchester United £44 in 2023, is the other. Providing starker context, Trafford's transfer will also knock Odyssey's Vlachodimos outside the top 20. The Greece international when he joined Newcastle United from Nottingham Forest for £20 in 2024. The comparison with other positions is startling. Spending on forwards and midfielders long ago breached the £100 mark. And while Harry Maguire is still the most expensive defender in history, costing Manchester United £80 in 2019, a further 19 players, centre-backs and full-backs combined, have cost €58 or more before this summer. In transfer market terms, goalkeepers lag behind. Historically, one obvious explanation stands above others. Attacking players are more fun and fashionable, and it's easier to measure their worth. Goal scorers have a clear value, and that is as true now as it was in the late 19th century. Attacking players are also more regularly associated with exciting, game-changing moments, memories that have always justified their value. That mattered because, for many years, transfer spending depended on convincing club directors of a player's worth. In Jonathan Wilson's biography of Brian Clough, he recalls the then Nottingham Forest head coach facing murmurings from the board after spending £270,000 on goalkeeper Peter Shilton in 1977. Clough described a member questioning why so much money was being spent on a player who would not be involved for 85 minutes of a game. Advertisement, this was a few months after Kevin Keegan, a forward, had been sold by Liverpool to Hamburg for £500,000. Clough was not always the most reliable witness, but the anecdote still describes prevailing attitudes through the years, when boardrooms were full of local businessmen and footballing knowledge was thin on the ground. Today, clubs are equipped with the scouting tools and data analytics that make understanding a player's worth simpler than ever. They can help identify a weakness in a side, pinpoint a player to fix them, and then, with the right modeling, help calculate an accurate value. But the same is not necessarily true for goalkeepers. Ian Graham was Director of Research at Liverpool between 2012 and 2023. He is also the author of the book How to Win the Premier League, published in 2025. He tells The Athletic that analyzing goalkeepers remains comparatively difficult for most clubs. The most important thing goalkeepers do stopping shots is captured very well by the data, but as with all football data, it's easy to analyze it wrongly. The other aspects of play are also much more difficult. For instance, traditional data providers are not good at capturing whether a goalkeeper tried to claim a cross or corner. Instead, they often record only when there's an error or a success. You need tracking data to capture goalkeeper ability properly. For instance, calculating whether they could or should have come out for a cross or corner requires significant modeling beyond what most clubs can do in-house. From what Graham describes, that knowledge gap creates a vicious cycle of sorts, with incomplete information leading to unsuccessful deals, in turn creating reticence around further spending. If you look at the big fees paid for goalkeepers over the past few seasons, he continues, many of them didn't work out. Partly, that's down to talent identification, with few clubs having specialist scouting and analysis for the position. Usually, the goalkeeping coach handles that work on top of their main job. Advertisement: Liverpool were very early in hiring a goalkeeping consultant, Hans Leitert. We ended up using Hans to collect unique goalkeeping data. That data and Leitert's judgment were ultimately part of one of the big goalkeeper transfers that was successful. He was a key voice when the club signed Alisson, the Brazilian with whom they won 2 Premier League titles and the Champions League. But most recruiting departments do not have such depth in their resources. A scout for a Champions League club, speaking anonymously to protect relationships, says, "What's really strange is that you meet a lot of scouts who say, 'I don't really know much about goalkeepers,' and with other positions that would never be accepted. Imagine if you said, 'Oh, I don't really know much about wingers.' I sometimes joke that whenever you make a list of goalkeepers, you always have to pass it through the goalkeeping coach. You would never do that with any other position. It's clear why clubs have reticence in this area, but the goalkeeping market is unique in other ways, too." Devin Ozek was formerly executive assistant to Bayer Leverkusen's CEO and helped manage transfers and squad planning. Most recently, he was Fenerbahce's sporting director. Asked why goalkeepers are not valued in the same way, he tells The Athletic that they often move clubs under different conditions. The goalkeeper is now involved in so many aspects of play. They are crucial to the build-up, they help teams defeat a high press, and they can launch counterattacks, all as well as being the last line of defense. Views are changing slowly, as is the willingness to invest in goalkeepers. Well, it's a bit easier to plan longer term. There's not as much fluctuation in the position, you don't need to make a change every second season. If you sign a goalkeeper, sometimes they stay for 5, 6, 7, or 8 years. It's not that it's easier to find a goalkeeper, but you probably have more time to prepare when you do have to sign one. Advertisement: if I have a top goalkeeper at my club and I know that in 1 or 2 seasons he's going to leave, then I have time to prepare. With outfield players, it's much more dynamic. With form or injuries and unexpected factors, the situation is more volatile. Ian Graham agrees, many top teams need 1 or 2 forwards or midfielders every year, but if they already have a good goalkeeper, they only need a new one every 5 years. Many clubs encourage stability, particularly around their goalkeepers. While competition and depth are seen as positives in most outfield positions, the same thinking is not often applied to goalkeepers, who benefit from trust and faith and are not subject to the same rotation. Most teams have a designated first choice and do not spend heavily on reserve keepers, partly to avoid that unrest. It's another calming factor in what is, as Ozek suggests, a much calmer market. A scout for a Premier League team, who also spoke anonymously to protect relationships, makes a further point. How many top goalkeepers are there that you would spend a large fee on? There are fewer than 10 right now, and all of them are starting for top clubs. Gianluigi Donnarumma was available last summer, but that was unusual. There's a supply and demand problem. The best clubs sign goalkeepers and stick with them, so they don't buy very often. There are not many goalkeepers that are worth that kind of investment, so that's another factor. And those that are worth it aren't moving clubs anyway. Talent production is a different issue. Many more youngsters grow up wanting to score goals rather than save them. The position also requires a particular size and build, which is another filter. But how the transfer market deals with goalkeepers is another quirk of the game, making them a case apart. What their actual worth is and what football clubs should be spending on them, nobody is quite as sure.